I'm back with an absolutely massive birthday book haul. Also, I have a bee sting and it's very itchy, so if you see me scratching, I shouldn't be, but I will be. I got 13 books in total for my birthday, which is an embarrassment of riches, I know. Since most of the books, I think 9 of them, are from the Booker Longlist, let's start there. The first one from my massive pile here is Flashlight by Susan Choi. I just started this one a couple of days ago. I'm only about 100 pages in, but I was very excited to read this one because it just sounded so compelling from the outset. The novel opens, and this is kind of what hooked me, with a daughter and her father walking on a beach. The father is holding a flashlight, and all of a sudden it's the next day. The daughter is found alone and the father has disappeared. So there's sort of like a little thriller component to it. And then from that point it shifts and we're with different characters, I believe, through the rest of the book from their different perspectives. They will grapple with not just how this event of the father's disappearance has affected all of them, but I believe also how their own individual histories affect each of them personally and then collectively as a family. The writing is just very evocative. I feel like I'm not very far into it. I've only read from 3 characters' perspectives, but I feel already intimately familiar, like I have a sense of who these people are. And something that's really refreshing is that I feel like Choi likes her characters, but at the same time recognizes that they are people and human, so I don't feel like she's going to shy away from maybe the less pleasant sides of them. I mean, she seems very eager to bring forth their humanity, if that makes sense. And I enjoy that kind of honesty in writing. So, yep, I'm only 100 pages in, but it's totally up my alley. Very excited to finish it, hopefully this week. I should mention these are in no particular order right now. It's just the order I carried the books into the bedroom in. The next one is Endling by Reva. This one is billed as a darkly humorous novel set in Ukraine right at the onset of the Russian invasion. We're following Eva, I believe, who is a snail conservationist, and she is participating in what I read described as romance tours with her 2 sisters. I get a feeling that romance tours is just a different phrase for mail order bride, but it sounds like that's kind of a cover-up for whatever scheme or ulterior motives they're ultimately pursuing. I follow Ben from Ben Reads Good, and he mentioned that there is another book with a plot that is very similar to this one, which from my understanding is just really unique, so that would be a huge coincidence. I don't have an opinion on that because I don't really know too much about it, but regardless, I just love a book that has a very kind of, let's say, outside the traditional box in terms of plot, and that hooks you into talking about more universal themes. Considering the subject matter, I'm going to guess that this one is going to talk about survival and hope and loss and love, all of those kinds of things. So, Endling by Reva. Next is Love Forms by Claire Adam. This, I believe, is the maybe slightly controversial one because it was published, or this author was published by Sarah Jessica Parker's publishing company, and she's one of the Booker Prize judges. I don't know how much of that is actually a controversy right now. I don't really care, to be honest with you. I mean, the story sounds really good, and again, Ben on Ben Reads Good gave it a really positive review, so I'm excited to read this one, but because it will explore themes of motherhood and grief, I might have to wait for the right time. I've had a year in that respect, so I need to read it when it's not going to be. I need to read it when I can finish it. So Love Forms tells the story of Dawn. She is a 50-something woman, I believe, from Trinidad, and she's searching for the daughter that she gave up as a teenager. Again, I think we're going to be dealing with themes of grief, love, reckoning with past choices or past versions of ourselves. I'm encouraged by the positive review that this one has received so far from Ben, who I'm sure I'll mention a few more times. My reading tastes really align with his. So if he endorses a book, I feel encouraged that I'm going to enjoy it too. But again, I might have to wait maybe towards the end of the season for this one. Next, I have Audition by Katie Kitamura. I think this one is a little bit more polarizing in terms of the reactions to it so far, but it sounds really intriguing to me. In this one, we're following an unnamed narrator. She's an actress who encounters a young man claiming to be her son. The whole situation there is going to force her to confront her own sense of self and I believe the performative aspects of her personality. So my assumptions are that this book is going to explore the questions of performance versus authenticity. Who are we as our true selves versus the people that we are, not just outside to the world, but in our different relationships to the people that we love or are friends with, or just who we encounter on a day-to-day basis. I've heard that there might be some degree of ambiguity in this novel, which does not bother me. I think I've mentioned this in other videos that I feel like that is becoming less of a trend in literary fiction. You know, people want more concreteness with their stories, which I understand, but I kind of like it if you can put it back on the reader to say, what do you think about the answers to these questions that I'm trying to explore through this story and that I'm channeling through these probably unlikable characters is my guess. But that's Audition. The next one is The Rest of Our Lives by Ben Markovitz, I think is how you say it. And this one I had heard was sort of like the male version of Miranda July's All Fours, which I reviewed earlier this year and I really loved. But from what I understand, just the general sense is that it might not be quite as like fun-loving and crazy. Well, I don't know about crazy, but it might just not be as sort of out there as All Fours was, which that worked for that book, but maybe the tone in this book works for this book. I don't know. I have to read it. The story centers around a father and husband whose name is Tom Layward, I believe, and he is embarking on this road trip as he's come to kind of, I think, like a midlife crisis. He had made a resolution to himself many years earlier that he was going to leave his wife when his daughter turned 18 because years ago she had been unfaithful to him. So the impetus for this road trip is that resolution, and I believe he'll be visiting people from his past along the way. And there's just something about a road trip book as people are getting older and maybe they're getting messier that just really appeals to me. And something about this book too, maybe it's because the daughter ostensibly is going to be going to school, it just gives me like fall vibes. So I'm excited to read this one. And it doesn't look like it's too long, which is particularly appealing considering there's some really chunky ones on this list. Next is Misinterpretation by Lydia Joga, I believe. This is the one that I've read. I finished Misinterpretation a couple of days ago, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's gotten mixed reactions from Goodreads, for whatever that's worth, but this is another unnamed narrator. It's kind of a theme, I feel like, in some of my reading this year, but a female unnamed narrator. She is Albanian, and she's living in the United States in New York City working as a translator. The issue with her is that she tends to get kind of involved in her clients' lives, and you get the sense that boundaries are very fluid for her. This has real effects on her other relationships, most specifically her marriage. I read a review that said this was very like genre blending. I would agree with that because there's just so many things going on in this novel. In my opinion, it is first and foremost a love story. I believe it's a love story about the narrator's relationship with her husband and with herself. She has two specific incidents with two separate people where she is, again, arguably getting over involved in their lives. One of them is a Kosovo war survivor, and that triggers her own memories and unburied past from when she was living in Albania and her experiences presumably with war and sort of that collective memory element. So in some respects, this is also a war novel, but not very overtly, if that makes sense. I found the prose just very haunting, but in a really lovely way. And I also felt like the author was very sympathetic and curious at the same time. She didn't seem to be judging her main character. She really wanted to know, what are the boundaries here? What is compassion and what is self-preservation? How does the immigrant experience separate you from your present or your past or both? Anyway, I don't want to review it too much right now, but I very much enjoyed it. So it's my favorite so far of the Booker nominees. Oh my god, my bee sting is so itchy. Okay, I'm putting some cream on my wound here. I can't believe how much this itches. The last time I got stung by a bee, I think I was 16. So suffice to say, a very long time ago. And I don't know how I've escaped this, especially considering we have bees. My husband keeps bees and harvests the honey, but he's always the one getting stung. I don't go near them. Moving on from my bee drama. The next one is Universality by Natasha Brown, another little one, very exciting. There's a gold bar on the cover because this is some type of murder story where the weapon that killed the victim was a gold bar. The victim in our book here is a young activist who is at an illegal rave. I'm not sure what that means, but that's what I read, in Yorkshire. A journalist writes an article about this incident, and that article goes viral. This is another one that Ben from Ben Reads Good gave a positive review to, although he said that this isn't for everyone, yet he very much enjoyed it, or I think he enjoyed it. I don't know how effusive he was about that, but either way, it's kind of giving me like Luigi Mangione, is that how you say his name? You know, the guy who killed the United Healthcare CEO. I think it's going to comment on those kinds of issues, meaning like classism, wealth disparity, etc. So in terms of timeliness, I am interested in it for that reason. But again, I'm mostly excited that it's small. Or I guess I should say short. Next one is Flesh by David Szalay, I think is how you say his last name. I do my best here with the pronunciation, but it's just never going to be perfect, I fear. This is, it's funny, I went to Hungary this year, and I'd been dying to go to Hungary for about 20 years, and somehow the year that I finally went, I'm reading all of these books that either take place entirely or at least some part of the plot is in like Budapest or something. So just kind of a funny coincidence. But Flesh is a coming-of-age novel following a young Hungarian boy whose name is István, something like that. And it follows him from his childhood living in Hungary all the way through to, I guess, some point in his adulthood when he ultimately moves to London. And my understanding is that the character of István, is very kind of awkward and shy, and he's navigating those aspects of his personality while confronting and dealing with his own masculinity and what it means to be a man and, ideas of manhood, while also navigating a very classist society. I am a little bit not excited for this book. People whose opinions I tend to agree with have enjoyed it, but the reason I'm not super excited about it, or I guess the reason I'm a little bit, I guess, it's not the one that I want to read immediately, is because this topic of like masculinity is a little bit tiresome to me. There was an article today is the 17th of August, in the New York Times. I'll do a screen recording if I remember. I can't remember what the title of it was, but it's something like Boys in 2025, and suggesting that there's some sort of crisis with the men and boys in our society. And I'm not here to take a stance on that, except to say, so I guess I am here to take a stance. It's just hard to hear and hard to read about as a woman, especially living in the United States. And I mean, that's the only experience I can speak to, so it's the only one I will speak to. But where your rights as a woman change from state to state, it is difficult to feel sorry or some level of sympathy for who I assume is a white man living somewhere, or any. The whole conversation I find a little bit insulting, I guess, at some level. But regardless, I do want to read the book, and this is why I put it on my list. Because I really believe, as corny as this is, books, they either teach you to have empathy or they help you to exercise that muscle. And although I feel the way that I feel, that doesn't mean that these two things have to be mutually exclusive. Women can have their experiences and men can have their experiences, and one doesn't have to not exist for the other one to be valid. I don't know if that probably doesn't make any sense, but either way, I don't want to shut myself off to that conversation just because I find it to be a little bit rich given the current times that we're living in. And maybe these conversations do need to be had and be explored so we can make progress in other areas, sort of like a long game approach. None of that is going to happen simply by me reading this book, but I just want to feel better about myself for having these kind of harsh feelings, and I just always think that there's a little bit of gray. And if reading a book, which is generally an enjoyable experience for me, unless you're The Bright Years by Sarah Damoff, then I'm happy to engage with that kind of subject matter in this format. So there's my little soapbox for the day. The last one of the Booker nominees I don't have, I ordered it from Blackwell's, I can't remember, but I ordered it and it has not arrived yet. It is The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller. I am excited for this one. It's about two young couples living in, I believe, like a little English countryside town or village during a very intense winter. So you get kind of like a locked room environment, and the two couples are dealing with just the realities of their relationships. I feel very hopeful that it's going to be very atmospheric, and so there's going to be a lot of tensions for things that might otherwise seem mundane but hit on these very human truths about people and marriage and how they communicate and relate to each other, especially during these times of stress. I tend to be a character over plot person anyway, so I feel like this is going to hit all of those marks whenever it gets here. So that was it for my Booker books. The next ones are the ones I got from my dad. He asked my husband like what he should get me for my birthday, and so David, my husband, sent him like the addendum list that I sent. My dad got every single one of them, including one that he thought was going to be out of print. He hunted it down, which is just very sweet. So the first one is The Safekeep by Yael Vander Wouden. I'm sorry, I should look that up, but I'm not going to. I believe this one was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2024. I could be wrong on that, or maybe it was a women's fiction. Either way, I know it's received critical acclaim. That's how I heard about it. And this is about a woman whose name is Isabel. She's living in 1960s Netherlands, and she's very rigid, very isolated, very, I just think, unfriendly to anybody interrupting her routine or her daily life or her standards. Her brother is either engaged or has a girlfriend named Eva who has to come and stay with her for some reason. I don't know what the reason is. And that presents many challenges to Isabel because Eva is her polar opposite personality-wise. I believe that there are sapphic elements, if not the sapphic part of it is a central part of the story. So that is very intriguing to me, considering not just where they live, but the time that they're living in. And I don't read too many queer novels that involve women for some reason. I tend to, I really like any story where we have like a really inflexible person and their whole world is upended by somebody else who seems much more fun to be around. And I don't think it's going to be that simplistic, but that on its own is enough to get me to be interested. So the other elements are just kind of perks on top of that. Next I have Either Or by Elif Batuman. This is the follow-up to The Idiot, which I reviewed in my July reading wrap-up. And I really loved The Idiot, so I wanted to get this one. In The Idiot, we were following Celine. She is a freshman at Harvard, and this one, I believe, is her sophomore year in 1996 Harvard. She's sort of grappling with the fallout from her time in Hungary during the summer with the guy that she had this kind of weird semi-romance, not quite a romance. We all know what those were like, right? Anyway, I loved The Idiot. I thought it was so funny, and so I'm just excited to read the follow-up. Next, I have Susan Sontag's Regarding the Pain of Others. I think this is technically considered an essay written in 2003. The essay is discussing the impact of the images of war and violence on people, specifically as they're channeled through photography and the media. And I just feel like it would be really interesting to read now because this was written well before social media became a thing, much less just a daily reality of our lives. So this question of voyeurism and these ethical components that come into play when we are witnessing in a very removed way other people's suffering. This isn't really, I think it's related, but I live in Idaho, I live in Idaho and I'm a lawyer. I've mentioned both of these things before, but the University of Idaho murders, when that happened, even though I didn't go to the university, I have a lot of friends who did, and I just felt really kind of gross about consuming anything having to do with that case, even though I like to consume true crime. I listen to Crime Junkie, but it just felt there was some moral component, and then also because I am familiar with the case from a legal side of it from friends who were on that case, and it's not super relevant, but again, it's sort of I only really thought about it because it became a little bit more close to home. I don't have any claim to it besides living in the state where that occurred, but it does raise these questions when you consume news in a way that is almost designed to be entertaining. How much are you retaining as this is a real thing that you need to feel a real human way about, or how much of it are you consuming purely as entertainment, and where do those lines get blurred? Anyway, I don't know that the essay is going to delve into it to that extent, but I am curious to read. I always am curious about exploring the empathy and where does it begin, where does it end? Do we lose it? How much is the media doing to help us lose it? I don't know. Anyway, that's that book. The last one is Elena Knows by Claudia Pinedo, translated by Frances Riddle. This was a shortlisted book for the 2022 International Booker Prize. I didn't know that. That was the one my dad couldn't find and he thought was out of print, and so he felt bad that he didn't have the whole list. It sounds almost thrillery, which again, I'm such an easy mark with when it's like a thriller or true crime, to my earlier point. So in Elena Knows, we're following Elena, who is suffering from Parkinson's disease, and she is investigating the death of her daughter, which she believes was a murder, but the authorities have determined was a suicide. So my assumption is that she is going to face some real challenges, particularly considering her physical disability. Another mother-daughter one, but with maybe a little bit more or a different kind of grit than Love Forms. So in that respect, I feel like it has the potential to be even more affecting. But, I'm going to have to read it to find out. Okay, that was 13 books. I'm exhausted. And thank you if you stuck around this long to listen to me basically just do a show and tell of all my new stuff. I really want to read as much as I can. I actually am still missing 4 books that were longlisted for the Booker Prize this year, but I need to see if I can get through these. And by the time the shortlist is announced, which I think is going to be at the end of next month, then I don't know, my ability to read all of the books might change. It just depends how far I get. But I think that will be the theme for the next couple months anyway. If you like this video, if you like any of my videos, please like them. And if you want to see more videos from me, subscribe. I do try to do at least one video a month, if not two. I'm asking kind of a lot because I'm not super consistent, but I do at least try to do a monthly reading wrap up and try to throw in at least one other type of video depending on whatever's going on in my book life that month. Now I'm going to go put some ice on my bee sting so I can stop whining about it. Thanks for watching. Bye.